So one thing I'd like to talk about is you mentioned it a little bit, which is that Bhagavan says in talks, and also I think some of the references you make, that for the self, for oneself, the body is included as an sort of like an infinitesimal point of what is.
In a way, the body is an appearance. What appears as this is what is. But what is untouched by this appearance. Because there is nothing other than that. So whatever appears to be cannot be other than what is. But what is just like the snake is nothing other than a rope, but the rope is not a snake. All this appearance is nothing but ourself, but we are not all this.
Yeah, in your talk, you said everything is God, but God is not everything. I got that reversed last time. So you say everything is God, but God is not everything. Can you be clear on how you distinguish it from pantheism? You just say it's not phenomena, basically. It's awareness, not phenomena.
Pantheism, as far as I understand it, identifies God with everything. Whereas God is nothing but God. Nothing can be identified with God, but nothing can be apart from God. If you ask what is God, God is God. If you ask what is all this, this is God. But God is not this. Because this is all limitation. God is the infinite can never be finite. But finite things cannot be other than the infinite.
So when we talk about infinite, we're not referring to phenomena, we're referring to Satchidananda, basically, is without limit.
Yes, because phenomena are all limited in one way or another.
Now, there's some stuff in Zen, I wonder if you could speak to this. There's a saying, a common saying, that when you start Zen, a mountain is a mountain. When you progress in Zen, the mountain is no longer a mountain. And then when you're done with Zen, the mountain is once again a mountain. Is that related all to Ramana's path?
We can, yeah, this is, we can interpret that in the light of Bhagavan's teachings. But first we take the forms to be real. Then we recognize that the forms are not real. But finally, we see that forms are nothing but the reality. That doesn't mean the reality is forms.
I feel like I understand
it. The way it's expressed, to say a mountain is a mountain, that final statement makes it seem not so deep. If it was said in this way, when you start off, the mountain is real. When you progress, then the mountain becomes unreal. Finally, you found the mountain is real. That would be the Advaitic way of saying it. How that would be interpreted, at first the mountain is real as a mountain. Later on, you recognize that as a mountain, it's unreal. But when you finally know what is real, then the mountain is nothing other than that. So the mountain is real as the reality, but it's not real as a mountain. The reality means the substance. In Sanskrit, they say vastu, in Tamil, poro. That means the actual substance. That is God.
The whole or the fullness or something.
Yes, you can say that, or you can say God or whatever, but it's just all ornaments are gold, but gold is not an ornament. You have to distinguish the substance from the forms. The forms have no existence apart from the substance. They borrow their existence from the substance. If you take away the substance, the forms no longer exist.
That makes sense.
So their existence is a borrowed existence.
I see.
They have no existence of their own. Likewise, all names and forms have no existence of their own. What actually exists is only the substance. What is that substance? You are that.
My friend stopped by last night, and she's a poet, and she's not actually interested in spirituality, yet her poetry seems to reflect sort of a higher state. And I was reminded, and I looked it up in talks, Bhagavan is quoted Shelley, and he's like, oh yes, he must have understood. Now, is that something you see as he's sort of being nice to a lady who doesn't really understand, or did he actually mean, yes, Shelley had a deeper understanding of this?
Who knows? That is all these recordings. We don't know how accurately they're recorded. We weren't there. We don't know. So it's all supposition. Maybe poets may get some sort of intuition, but that doesn't mean that they have become one with that.
Well, she was saying
we
how
can all have some sort of intuition, but the intuition is not the real experience.
Well, she was saying how she was experiencing herself, one as light, and then two as everything and nothing. And I was like, wow, for someone who doesn't like spirituality, you're really talking like a spiritual person.
Yes, wow. Yeah, I mean, people have that is, we are not what we seem to be. So many people, whether poets or artists or philosophers or scientists, or just people who know nothing in particular, we all sometimes get intuitions, but there's something behind all this. There's something more to this than meets the eye. Because if you think about it, it's obvious. That is, we are fascinated by this world of names and forms. But in what does this world of names and forms appear? It appears in awareness. So that awareness is that can give a seeming reality to all these things. How much greater that awareness is than all these things. The physical light illumines physical things, but this awareness is the light that illumines everything. Cool. It illumines even the physical light.
Yes, I love that. When Bhagavan says it's clearer than a Nelly fruit in the palm of your hand.
Yes.
That actually makes sense to me, because it's like, to see that fruit, you have to like have an eye rise and you have to have a perception. Whereas it's beneath all of that. It's more clear than anything.
It is. And when we recognize that it's more clear than anything, then it's clear why Bhagavan says this is the easiest of all paths. This is the easiest. There's nothing as easy as knowing ourselves. The reason it seems difficult is because we don't yet want to know ourselves. We say, oh, I want to know myself. I want to be liberated. But we are not yet ready to pay the price. Paying the price is letting go of everything else.
So now, last time you talked about, and I agree with you, for some people, it's a delusion to think you no longer have an ego. But if you read talks, Ramana says the delusion is that you're not already yourself. You're not already himself, being as you are. So that to me is very interesting. The delusion is we are not that we are that.
But to whom is that delusion? Who is deluded? What we actually are is never deluded. Many things people didn't grasp. Bhagavan wasn't concerned with illusion or delusion or anything. To whom is the illusion? To whom is the delusion? Bhagavan is always pointing back at ourselves. Bhagavan says, to think I have known myself or I have not known myself, both are grounds for ridicule. Equally.
Yeah, you don't go around saying, I am a man, I am a man. You just are.
Because the idea I know myself or the idea I don't know myself, both are ideas that occur to whom? To ego. In sleep, we don't think I know myself or I don't know myself. It's only when we rise as ego that knowledge and ignorance comes into existence. So Bhagavan is constantly pointing back at ourselves. But people don't grasp that. Just like the Mahavakyas. People give long lectures on the Mahavakyas, but they all miss the point. As Bhagavan says in verse 32 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, as soon as we are told you are that, what should our response be? Oh, I'm that? What am I? You are that is pointing at you. Till now, we've been seeking that outside ourselves, whether that is God or happiness or whatever it may be. Whatever we're seeking outside, we are that. So we have to turn back within and find it within ourselves. But instead of grasping what is being said, but they're pointing, look at yourself is what Tattvamasi means. Stop looking at that. Stop looking at anything other than yourself. Jesus says the same thing in the Bible. They will say, lo here, lo there. But lo, God, the kingdom of God is within you. Look at yourself. Don't look outside.
Very true. I was watching a Zen Buddhist on YouTube briefly the other day, and he did take it like, when there's no self, when there's no ego, I am one with the creek. I am one with the trees, with the grass and all that. Now, what would you say to that?
So long as you see the grass and the trees, you are something separate from them. You have a subject and an object. What we actually are is beyond both subject and object.
Very cool. That makes sense.
That's why Bhagavan says, unless perception of the world ceases, we cannot know what we actually are.
Yeah,
in the third paragraph and fourth paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, he says.
And when we're talking about perception, like when you say we don't see the world, what you're saying is it's because we're being oneself. We're being the self, ourself, because seeing is being at that point. So we're not really seeing ourself. We are seeing ourselves, but it's because we are ourselves.
Yes, being oneself alone is knowing oneself. Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Upadēśa Undiyār.
So when we talk about seeing the world versus seeing ourself, it's kind of two different ways of using the word seeing, because seeing the world we mean with our mind, with our eye,
yes.
Meaning the individual,
the
ego.
Seeing objects, knowing objects is an act of knowing. Our attention is going away from ourselves towards something else. So knowing anything other than ourselves is an action. Knowing ourselves, our attention doesn't have to go anywhere. We just have to be as we are. And being ourselves alone is knowing ourselves. So it's knowing in a fundamentally different way.
I love that. I've been enjoying your talks with the Ramana Foundation and the other groups. They've been a lot of fun to watch. Are you finding that that's been helpful for people?
No concern of mine. That's Bhagavan's lookout.
Awesome.
People ask me questions, I give answers. Whether the answers are useful or not, who knows? In Gita, Krishna says you have right to the action, not the fruit thereof. Plus,
you wouldn't see them as other than yourself.
Well, I wish I didn't, but unfortunately, I still see otherness. Because so long as we experience ourselves as a form, we experience other forms. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. So I am this form, all other people are other forms. So there's self and other. That's the whole problem. That's
and Bhagavan only saw
subject and object.
Okay, and then Bhagavan only saw himself. And then when I say he only saw himself, that really means he only was himself, which is the only thing.
Yes, yes.
Interesting. Part of it is just getting used to the language,
Yes, but the language, getting used to what is being pointed at. Because the language can never capture the subject, but the language can point towards it. We need to see what is being pointed at.
And sort of his favorite way of, or most common way of pointing at that was to just abide as his self, abide as oneself.
See to whom are all these questions.
Exactly. Fair enough.
That is one of the most powerful questions, Bhagavan. Two powerful questions. One is, who am I? Which should stop us in our tracks. Second question, which is a very great aid in this practice, is to whom. Whatever may appear, whatever may be experienced, to whom? To whom? It's constantly pointing back at ourselves. That now, doesn't mean we have to be asking these questions. Those questions are pointing. They're pointing.
Exactly. So when we say that it's the easiest, I agree with that, but it seems to me that most people don't agree with that. So how can we see clearly that I am what I am is the easiest?
You don't agree with it.
No, I don't. Only Bhagavan does.
Because if it's easy, we should experience it easy. We don't experience it as easy. We can understand why Bhagavan says it is easy. We can understand, yes, it is easy. That's a mere understanding, but it's not our experience.
Not at all.
So long as we have liking to experience other things, so long as we have Vishaya vasanas, we are still not willing to let go of other things.
Exactly.
So that is the problem. That is why it seems difficult.
Exactly. So, and letting go of everything really isn't letting go of each individual thing. It's letting go of I as I think I am, and then abiding as I really am.
Yes. If you hold on to I, you're thereby letting go of everything else. Holding on to I means being so keenly self-attentive that we thereby cease to be aware of anything else.
So really, all we're really trying to do, like kind of the whole teaching, is just abide as I am, cling to I am, self-attentiveness. That's the whole thing.
Yes.
That's how you get rid of Vishaya vasanas. That's how you destroy the mind. That's how everything. You hold the Bhagavan and nothing else.
That is both the practice and the goal.
Both the practice and the goal. And then at some point, Ramana must have not even had attention on I am. It's just that's all he was, and there is no more attention, because attention, quite honestly, is a focus of oneself as ego. Abiding requires no attention. You just are that.
Attention is a function of ego. It's a tool of ego. That is, when we're aware of many things, if we focus our awareness on one thing, that is what is called attending, or one thing, or a set of things. That is called attending. So attention is a selective focusing of our awareness. But when there is only awareness, the question of focusing awareness on anything, there's nothing to focus it on. And it need not focus it on itself, because there is nothing other than itself.
Exactly. So really, self-attentiveness is a process for oneself as ego I am, not as Bhagavan I am.
Yeah, as ego, we attend to ourselves. By attending to ourselves, we as ego subside and we remain as we are.
And then eventually that sort of happens eternally. See, I feel like it kind of already is the case, and it eternally is the case. But then we say...
It is the case, but we have our problems, don't we?
All the time.
Yes, so the screen is always there, but so long as we take the pictures to be real, we have a problem.
So let me just ask the most important question. Who am I? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, that was your answer?
Who did you ask?
Okay, cool.
If you ask who am I, you can only ask I who am I. You can't ask someone else who am I.
Exactly. Okay.
You need to turn your attention to yourself to find out what you are. I can't turn your attention for you.
Okay, and now what's interesting there is when you say turn my attention.
It is not a question. It is not merely a question. Of course, it is a question, but the mere question is not of any use. We need to find the answer. What is the answer? It has to be found within ourselves. We can't look outside and find it. Bhagavan said we can't find it. We can't know ourselves by investigating in books. In order to know what we are, we need to investigate ourselves within ourselves.
And we have to walk that path on our own.
On our own. No one can accompany us.
So I was finding religious sentiment somewhat helpful over the last couple of years, because I think it's common for us to take ourselves as ego. And so the idea that God is other, I know it's a lower form and so forth, but the idea that God is other, I think, is helpful when we take ourselves as ego.
In practice, when we look outside, God is other. Because when we're looking outside, we take ourselves to be this small person. And how can this small person be that infinite whole God? Why it is said you are God, it means look at yourself, stop looking outside. So there's no contradiction between Bhagavan worshipped Aruṇācala as God. Why? Because when we look outside, God seems to be something other than ourselves. And when we look outside, when we are looking outside, we are experiencing ourselves as a form. So God cannot be anything but a form. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uḷḷadu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. We cannot know God as formless without knowing ourselves as formless. When we know ourselves as formless, there are no limits on formlessness. Forms are limited, formlessness is unlimited. So when we are unlimited, then we will see that God is nothing other than ourselves. But to look outside and say, oh, I'm God, that is a complete misunderstanding. As I said, the Mahavakya Tattvamasi, what we should understand from that, what instruction is that Mahavakya giving us? It's not just giving us a piece of information, it's by implication, it's giving us an instruction. Look at yourself. That is the implication of Tattvamasi. So it's not a mere idea. There's no use in saying, I am that, I am that. That is the truth. What is shining in us as I is Brahman. But in order to experience that, we need to look at ourselves.
And when you say look at yourself, I suppose that's the practice as ego, but really it's a matter of being oneself.
How can we, right, now we seem to be ego. How can we as ego be ourselves?
We can't.
Well, no, the only way to be ourselves is to subside back into our source, back into ourselves. How to subside? Because the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by looking at other things, but to subside by looking at itself. The only way to bring about the permanent subsidence of ego is to look at ourselves. Yes, we can subside by other means. When we get tired, we fall asleep. In sleep, we are just being God. Nothing more, nothing less than that. But ego isn't thereby annihilated. It pops up again. Because it's not as ego that we experience ourselves as God. It's only as God that we experience ourselves as God. So as ego, we need to experience ourselves as God. God here means pure awareness. That is the fundamental awareness I am. In order to see ourselves as such, we need to look at ourselves. So the ultimate teaching is Sumayiru, just be. But how to just be? The vital clue given by Bhagavan is look at yourself. If you look at yourself, ego will thereby subside, and what will remain is just being, which is what you always actually are. Bhagavan's teachings are so incredibly simple. But we need to be willing to give up all other ideas and just grasp this fundamental simplicity. Because otherwise, so long as we are seeing it through a mind full of complicated ideas, we will fail to see the simplicity of it. This is what has happened with Advaita philosophy. instead of taking the Mahavakya, Tattvamasi, at face value, you are that. There are some Advaitins who say it's not sufficient just to investigate Tvam, you also have to investigate Tat. As if there are two things. Again, they're splitting Tat and Tvam. There's only one thing. That Tat, that God, let's say. Till now, you were taking God to be something other than yourself. If you yourself are God, what do you have to look at? Stop looking at other things, look at yourself. So it's so simple, Advaita. But there are big volumes of philosophy have been written on Advaita. And the simple essence has been lost. Even though they all talk about, they will give long lectures on Tattvamasi. But never do they say what the practical implication of Tattvamasi is. If you are that, if I am that, who am I? We need to look at ourselves, investigate ourselves. Not investigating ourselves in books, not reading all these different philosophies, turning within and seeing what we actually are. Things will happen as they are to happen, when they are to happen, if they are to happen.
That'll be great. When we talked one time, you said Bhagavan gives us what is needed at the right time, and it occurred to me that what you meant wasn't, it's like he's always giving us the right thing. He's always giving us himself.
Exactly.
That's interesting. When you say look at oneself, you are directing that to the ego, because the truth is we already are ourself.
Of course, all spiritual teachings are only for ego. All spiritual teachings are addressed to ego. When it is said Tattvamasi, that Tvam is ego.
Oh, okay. Wow. So then really there's nothing to say at the end of the day.
Ego, so long as ego looks at other things, it is ego. If ego looks at itself, it is Tat.
Wow. I think you could, if you were to read Talks, which is my favorite book, I'm sorry to say, I know you like the other ones better. I think you can sort of read Ramana as something closer to a Neo-Advaitin. I know I was kind of down on them last time, and I know we disagree with them. I would say Ramana is kind of, if you had to place him, he's kind of in between Neo-Advaita and traditional Advaita in a way. But in a better sense, he's like the most pure form of Advaita.
Bhagavan is what is shining in your heart as I. If you try and fit Bhagavan somewhere between Neo-Advaita and traditional Advaita, you're missing the point.
Exactly.
The point is I. The whole point is I. Whether it's traditional Advaita or Neo-Advaita, do let anyone misunderstand it. What do we understand? If we understand Bhagavan correctly, to whom is traditional Advaita? To whom is Neo-Advaita? To me. Who am I? We need to turn our attention back towards ourselves. Let anyone understand it or misunderstand it. It's no concern of ours.
I think what would be...
If you understand it, how does that help me? If you misunderstand it, how is that detrimental to me? Even if I understand it, it's no use to me if I don't put it into practice. If I don't turn and look at myself.
I think what would be most beneficial for me at this point is to just stop watching other videos and stop reading comments and just sort of talk with you or sort of imbibe what you're saying and what Bhagavan is saying and just kind of forget the rest. And then I won't worry about misunderstandings, this, that, and the other.
Don't forget to watch yourself.
Well, if I watch you and if I watch Bhagavan...
You're not going to find the truth in Michael or in anything Michael says. You can find the truth only in yourself.
But what you say reflects Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is that.
Yes, but even Bhagavan didn't ask us to look for ourselves in his texts. His texts are there to point us back at ourselves. That's the whole point of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Nāṉ Ār and everything. In Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan says you can never find yourself in books. You have to find yourself within yourself. The books are useful to the extent to which they point at ourselves. But we can make use of them only by looking at ourselves. If we continue looking only at the books instead of looking at ourselves, I'm not putting down the books. That is, Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, Nāṉ Ār, Aruṇācala. These are very, very valuable works, very great supports to us, and very great encouragement and very great reminders, helping us to clarifying the way for us. But they're all pointing at one thing: know yourself. So if we don't try to know ourselves, these books are, it's like having a torchlight but looking in the wrong direction. You'll never find what you're looking for unless you look in the right direction. All these books are telling us, look within, see yourself. There's nothing to be found outside. Everything you're looking for is within you.
And that's the true beauty, not trees and birds and guitars, but I am that.
Exactly. Not even I am that. Bhagavan says it even simpler than that. I am I.
Or just I am, or just I.
Because so long as you've got I and that, though I am that, we're thinking in terms of two things. It's one I identifying itself with that. That's why the practice is who am I, and the final attainment is I am I.
And when do we find that? Aren't we already that?
You are already that, but so long as you are aware of yourself as I am shown, you're not aware of yourself as that.
What about the burnt rope analogy that Bhagavan said? After we attain, the ego is kind of like a burnt rope, harmless and all that stuff.
There are different levels of explanation have to be given to suit people of different levels of maturity. For many people, the person is, a jnani is an enlightened person, a self-realized person. They take the person, that is the body and mind, to be the jnani.
Yes.
So explanations have to be given to them at their level. But the deeper explanation is the jnani is not the body. The jnani is, Bhagavan often said, jnana me jnani. That means jnana alone is the jnani. There's no such thing as a self-realized person. So long as we're a person, we're not self-realized. When we're self-realized, we are not a person, we are only ourselves. How to know ourselves? Only by being ourselves. We can't be what we actually are and be this person at the same time.
Yes, exactly.
So different, that's one thing we always have to understand with Bhagavan's teachings, or even more so with Advaita in general, is that there are different levels of explanation. So we shouldn't confuse different levels of explanation. And why different levels of explanation are necessary? In order to suit people of different levels of spiritual development. A few days ago, since we have come to this subject, you said about you don't like it when you disagree with me when I talk about different levels, and you find it mildly insulting.
Yes.
It's a simple fact. If you call a 10-year-old, are you insulting him or her?
No, but it's different.
A 10-year-old is not a 12-year-old, he's not a 15-year-old, he's not a 20-year-old. In the spiritual path, we are all undergoing a process of spiritual development, spiritual growth. So there are different levels. We all go through these different levels. We have to.
But on the other hand, levels are only for ego, which at the end of the day is illusory, and Bhagavan has no levels.
All spiritual teachings are only for ego. Bhagavan is only for ego.
And one of his
Advaita
teachings
is only for ego. All religions are only for ego. So This is, again, we shouldn't confuse different levels. The ultimate truth is ajata. But in ajata, there's no guru, no disciple, no teaching, nothing to be taught. There's no spiritual practice because nothing has ever come into existence.
Right.
Nacho pati, there's no arising. If there's no
Exactly.
arising, then there's no question of any, that is, in that verse, that is that verse in Mandukya Karika and also in the Upanishad. Bhagavan has translated it also. What it says is, there's no destruction. It starts off by saying, na nirodho, no destruction. Why is there no destruction? We can ask, nachotpati, because there's also no arising. If nothing comes into being, nothing can cease to be. And because there's no arising, therefore there's no bondage, there's no one who's bound, there's no one who's seeking liberation, there's no sadhaka, and there's also no mukta. So the key to understanding that verse is nachotpati. There's also no arising. If there's no arising, then there cannot be any guru or disciple or teaching or advaita or dvaita or religion or materialism or anything. There is only what is. And what is I am. That is the ultimate truth. But as soon as we start talking philosophy or religion or talking about spiritual paths, spiritual aspirants, there are different levels. We're undergoing a process of spiritual growth, so to speak. Who is undergoing? Ego is undergoing, of course. It's not our real nature doesn't undergo any change. So everything is only for ego.
So it's kind of like the ego is getting less and less and less until it subsides entirely.
Exactly. All that is required is to renounce this ego. How to renounce this ego? See whether it actually exists. Investigate it. If you see it, if you look at it carefully enough, you'll see it's just pure awareness, which is immutable, eternal, never changes, never touched by anything. That is why the ultimate truth is ajata.
When we say look at ourselves, is it helpful to say, like, look at the base of what we take to be ourself, like the root, the I am beneath what we take to be I am?
Bhagavan has expressed it in various different ways. We need to see. Why did he express it in various different ways? Because what he is pointing at is beyond the range of thought and word. So the words are just pointers. Yes, Bhagavan often said, investigate the place from which I rises. What is the place from which I rises? It's only from ourselves. That is the false awareness, I am this body, arises from a pure awareness, I am. So when he says investigate the place where it rises, it means investigate that fundamental awareness, I am. So in the terms in which you've just put it, see the base of yourself, yes. But that base of yourself is not something other than yourself. It's not you with a base underneath it. You are that base. So
yeah, that's what I mean.
See what you are at the deepest level of your being.
Well, what I am at the deepest level is a level that there is no longer depth or height. It's just what is.
Exactly. But so long as we're talking about it, it is two egos talking about it. So we cannot pretend that there is no problem. We can't get rid of a problem merely by negating it. That is, we have to acknowledge there is a problem. That's why Bhagavan begins Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu with a problem. Because we see the world. Yes, that is a problem. Why do we see the world? He explains in verse 4. We see the world because the world means all these forms. Why do we see all these forms? Because we see ourselves as a form. Why do we see ourselves as a form? Because we're looking away from ourselves. We're not looking at ourselves. If we look at ourselves, there's no form. We are a formless phantom. So we'll disappear if we look at ourselves carefully enough. And what will then remain is what we actually are.
And who we really are is beyond thoughts and world and mind and body and everything.
Everything. All these are only for ego. So to whom are all these things? That's why that question to whom is such an important question. Whatever we are faced with, whatever appears before us, whatever problem we face, whatever thing we may have difficulty understanding, to whom? That's an extremely precious clue Bhagavan has given us, an extremely practical clue.
But
that doesn't mean we go on asking ourselves to whom. That's a pointer. Whatever appears, to whom does it appear?
And then when you point down like that, we're meant to abide there, be that.
Yes.
That to me, by the way, is a very big clue when you point. I hope people are watching what you do with your hands. You're doing something important.
Okay, I'm pointing. Yeah, okay, I am.
No, you really are. You really are. I see like a deeper meaning to that.
Okay, but don't see it in physical terms.
Exactly.
Because we take ourselves to be the body, instead of pointing outwards like this, whatever it is, pointing like that, we're pointing like this. That's all that is meant.
But it's like below the mind, and it's like subsiding.
Yeah, it's deep within ourselves.
And it is ourself.
It is ourself, yes. We can find ourselves only deep within ourselves. And when we find ourselves deep within ourselves, there's neither depth nor height.
Exactly. So in our path, there's actually an end point contrasted with like going to heaven. There's sort of glory upon glory. But in our path, there is an end point. Would you say?
Definitely.
It's definitely. Yeah, exactly.
Everything started with the big bang of the rising of ego. And it has to end in the same place.
Very cool. That is very, very deep, man. I don't think many people could go along with that. That's really, really deep.
It doesn't matter if nobody will go along with it until they're ready to accept it. When they're ready, they will accept. But even why talk about they? What about us? Yes. Are we ready for it yet?
Yeah, I got to get used to that. I'll stop watching and reading, and I'll just sort of focus more. But even that, I shouldn't focus on you or even on Bhagavan. I should look within, is what you're telling me.
Yes. But in this journey of looking within, Bhagavan's teachings are a very, very great aid and support. Because what Bhagavan has expressed in words is extremely deep. When we first read Bhagavan's words, we understand a little. But as we go deeper and deeper in the practice, we are able to see more and more depth of meaning in his words. So his words are, until the moment ego is annihilated, Bhagavan's words are a constant companion to us, a constant aid and a guide to us. They're our friend, guide, and philosopher, or whatever they say.
That's cool.
They're our only genuine support. Because this is a lonely path. We cannot take anyone along with us. It's only we ourselves have to follow this path. So the support to us in following this path is Bhagavan's words.
And his being, which is shining in our heart as I.
Yes, exactly. Yes, of course.
And really, we don't even need to attend to that. We just are that.
You do need to attend to it because you are that. And because you now seem to be something other than that, you need to attend to that.
But if we are that, we are that. And that's sort of the end of it. We're just that.
What is your experience now?
I have no experience.
Who has no experience? It is Sean who is saying now, I have no experience. Or at least it's the I who takes itself to be Sean.
Exactly.
So don't think you can get rid of a problem merely by denying it.
So what is the problem?
You have a problem, and you have a
Exactly.
solution.
As I am.
Yes. You,
See,
as I am shown, you have a problem. As I am,
Exactly.
you have a solution.
Yes, exactly. I agree with that. I, as Sean,
I'm
agree
sure
with that.
Bhagavan will be happy to know you agree with him.
I liked when you said we don't need consensus. If we have a consensus with just me and Bhagavan, that's good enough.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah, he really is the best. I don't know. For me, like, no one compares to Bhagavan. All the teachers and all the teachings, I still have like a heart for Zen, but for some reason, Ramana really is just the greatest.
That is all the others. They're all Bhagavan in different forms, because Bhagavan has to help people at different levels. But in this particular name and form, he was uncompromising in giving the truth as it is. Of course, because he's all loving and all compassionate, he did adapt his teachings to the needs of individuals. But no one was as persistent in pointing back to, and he didn't discriminate between, for the very learned, for the very mature, we can teach this, and for others we have to teach something else. Even for totally illiterate Akilandamaya, when she asked for something that would be useful for her, he simply said, "Une vidamaliru," be without leaving yourself. And she herself said she didn't understand those words, but those words were ever with her from that time onwards. Because those words have their own power. What does it mean? Be without leaving yourself. What does that mean? It's such a simple instruction, but such a deep instruction. Every time we look at anything other than ourselves, we are thereby leaving ourselves. So being without leaving ourselves means just being what we actually are, holding on to ourselves, being so keenly self-attentive that we don't give room to rising of any other thoughts.
That makes sense. But like you say, it's all an instruction for an ego, so it's a little bit confusing when you start to go deep, 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 deep. It's like, what's left to cling to? It's just what is.
It's not confusing when you go. The deeper you go, the clearer it all becomes. Exactly. It's confusing when you look outside.
Right.
All clarity is to be found by looking within. There's no confusion inside. Exactly. It's when we allow our mind to come out and say, "Oh, but if I don't leave myself, then how am I to take care of my body? How am I to take care of my family? How this?" We allow our mind to go outward. But such and such a teacher said you can also get it by japa. So can't I get it by japa? Or can't I, isn't Krishna Bhakti the best of all paths? Or isn't, if we allow our mind to go outwards, all confusion comes. But if we turn our mind within and cling only to ourselves, if we don't leave ourselves, as Bhagavan said, then all clarity will flood. We will be swallowed by clarity. We will lose ourselves in that infinite ocean of perfect clarity.
In another sense, though, doesn't Bhagavan cling to us?
Bhagavan doesn't do anything.
Exactly.
But he does everything without doing anything. Yes, he does. But Bhagavan has said we have a prey in the jaws of a tiger. So we cannot escape. So yes, in a sense, he is clinging to us. Even when we let go of him, he is still holding on to us.
So in a sense, I love that. In a sense, based on what we've said here today, like anything that's going to be diminishing our ego, making it less, until it's finally annihilated is sort of like our guru, is sort of the teaching. Anything that makes it less is the teaching in a way.
Yes. In the final paragraph of Nāṉ Ār, Bhagavan says very, very beautifully, Evlo kevlo tandu nadikiromo avlo kavlo namayundu. That means, to whatever extent sinking low we behave, to that extent there is goodness. So the one thing Bhagavan asks us to do is to subside more and more and more and more and more. To the extent that we subside, to that extent is it good. So the whole aim of our life should be to subside. We have no other purpose.
That's awesome.
Why did God create me? To subside.
Wow.
Why was there a Big Bang? To subside.
And so your response to people have been saying things like, you know, the beautiful trees, the beautiful creek. Your response is the real beauty is I am.
Yes, yes. Whatever beauty we see outside is a reflection of the beauty within us. Because beauty is in the eye of a beholder. The things we like, we call beautiful. Why we consider trees and nature to be beautiful? Because to us it seems more natural. If we see a slum, it's not a natural condition for humans to live in slum condition. So it looks very ugly to us. Whereas if we see nice, beautiful forests and everything, it seems very natural. But even that is not natural. Having a body is not natural. Having a mind is not natural. Just what is natural is just being. So we will find perfect satisfaction. We will find true beauty only when we remain as we actually are.
And how do we remain as we actually are? It's not something we're doing. It's something Bhagavan is. I am.
Yeah. Remaining as we actually are is not a doing. But in order to remain as we actually are, we must stop doing. And in order to stop doing, we must stop rising. All doing begins with our rising. So how to stop rising? As soon as we rise, we cling to that is the very nature of our rising, entails clinging to forms. Grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping feeling of form, it flourishes. So the very nature of ego is grasping form. So how can we bring about the subsidence of ego? So long as we're grasping form, we are sustaining ego. In order to bring about the subsidence of ego in such a way that it will not arise again, we need to grasp ourselves.
And then at the end of the day, there's nothing to grasp. It's just I am.
Yes. When everything else is swallowed by I am, then we can say there's nothing to grasp. And so long as there's the slightest awareness of any otherness, any division, any differences, then we have to cling to I am.
Very cool.
When all differences, when all otherness is swallowed by I am, there'll be no one left to cling to I am. I am need not cling to I am, because I am is I am. But so long as we seem to be something other than that, so long as we take ourselves to be a body, we don't seem to be just I am. Yes, I am, but I'm also Michael.
But that means there's two eyes, not one eye.
No, it's the same I. I am.
Oh.
And who am I? I am Michael.
No, you are that.
I know. What I'm saying is that I am is our being. But we, on top of that being, we've been imposed an identity. That identified I is what is called ego. That when we identify ourselves as I am this or I am that, that is ego.
Exactly. But then that means when you say I am Michael, that means that's ego. But you're not ego, you are that.
Of course, who but ego will say I am Michael?
So it's confusing because
who could be foolish enough to say I am Michael other than ego?
But we all know that you are that. So why don't we just say I am that instead of I am this or that?
To say I am that, to say I am this or I am that, both are equally false. That's why Bhagavan said the ultimate truth is not I am this or I am that. It's only I am I.
Exactly. So why not just say I am I?
Because it's not a matter of just saying. It's a matter of I am I is not just a. What are those words pointing at? Yourself.
I am.
Yes. But merely by saying I am I, we're not going to. That doesn't solve our problem.
Why not just be I am I instead of I am Michael? Why not just be I am I?
Exactly. Because we are very foolish, and we are foolish because we still have that taste to go outward. We still have the taste to experience things other than ourselves. Those tastes to experience other things are what are called Vishaya Vasanas.
Yes.
That is what we need to wean ourselves off. How to wean ourselves off that? The most effective way is by clinging just to I am.
Exactly. And that's what we really are, so there's no need to cling at the end of the day. It's just what is.
But forget the end of the day.
Okay.
Here and now, there is a need to cling.
Always.
Yes. The end of the day may come soon or sooner or later, we don't know. But we're not concerned with the end of the day. We're concerned with clinging to I am here and now.
Exactly. Very cool. And then, so what's the instruction on how to cling to I am? Because I think that's still a bit confusing for some people, maybe. There's no instruction. You have to find your own way within the house, your own house. Is that?
Exactly.
Actually, you were giving a couple of really good pointers, I found. I think you've only done it that I've heard a couple times, and I'm pretty sure I've listened to basically everything you've ever done, more or less, if not everything. And you were saying, what is denoted by that word I? And there is something it's denoting, and what is it? And you were pointing out other things, like when this word is used, what are we pointing at? When I is used, what are we pointing at? And that's what we need to discover.
Yes. But these sort of things, people have to understand these things themselves. When
true.
People ask Bhagavan, how to investigate myself? Bhagavan said, you need to be shown the way inside your own house. If it's subjective, it can be shown objectively, but this cannot be shown objectively. So Bhagavan has given so many pointers. We have to think deeply about what Bhagavan is saying, why Bhagavan says this. But we shouldn't take the word superficially, because Bhagavan's words have a very deep meaning. When he says, if any thought, whenever any thought arises, if one vigilantly investigates to whom, it will be clear to me. What does he mean by that? Does he mean that we go on every time we wait for the next thought to pop up and ask, to whom is this thought? No, it's not about asking questions. He says investigate. He says if one vigilantly, Jagrate, vigilantly investigates. So that means it's by our attention that we can investigate to whom. So instead of allowing our attention to go outward, we turn it back to ourselves, to whom all this appears.
When I was younger, before I had any sort of instructor in Ramana, I just read talks. I thought it was a mantra, so I was like, "Who am I? Who am I? Who am I?"
Many people misunderstand that. That's partly due to inadequate translations and poor recordings, but it's also due to that is, we must be ready to give up all our old ideas, all our preconceptions. We must be ready to make our mind a blank slate. Then only Bhagavan's teachings will make a fresh impression upon us.
Very true.
If we try to reconcile his teachings with all the other things we already believe, we will. That's why his teachings are challenging everything we believe. What is our most fundamental belief? I am Michael. That's my most fun. Everything else I believe is based upon this fundamental belief that I am Michael. And so long as I believe I'm Michael, I also believe this world is real. Even believe is not quite the right word, because it's actually our experience. Now I actually experience myself as Michael. I am sitting here, I am talking. Who is sitting? Who is talking? It's a body. It's not me. I'm thinking. Who is thinking? It's a mind that's thinking. It's not me. So we identify ourselves with these things. That's why Bhagavan has made everything so simple. But we need to think deeply about what he is saying here, what he is pointing at. But to understand his words correctly, we can understand his words only to the extent to which we actually put them into practice. The more we put them into practice, the more blindingly obvious it will be what Bhagavan is pointing at. But if we don't put them into practice, or if we don't think about them carefully enough, if we just jump to conclusions, oh, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I just have to repeat, who am I? We are missing the point. We need to first understand what Bhagavan is saying. Because if we don't understand, we'll be going in the wrong direction. What is Bhagavan pointing at? So we need to think deeply about what he said, and we need to try to apply that in practice. The more we apply it in practice, the clearer his pointer will become. The clearer his pointer becomes, the deeper we'll be able to go in the practice. Yeah, those who are meant to go deep in this subject will go deep in this subject.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to the idea that I'm not supposed to be like helping other people. Honestly, it's very hard for me. That's sort of been my whole focus for a really long time.
There's one other person who needs your help.
Who?
Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not kidding, man. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
But even Sean doesn't need your help. It's the I who says I am Sean who needs your help.
Yes, so that's true.
Be compassionate to that one.
Yes, to that one. That makes sense. I was trying to explain to my friend what it means that Bhagavan will think for us, Bhagavan will speak for us, Bhagavan will act for us. Can you shed some light on that? He's having trouble sort of with family life and work and whatnot, and wants to know sort of how do we focus on Bhagavan is the one doing, in his mere presence, everything is happening. I need do nothing.
Yes. Not Bhagavan will do. Bhagavan is doing everything for us. Bhagavan is thinking for us. But we foolishly think we have to think for ourselves. And so we get into trouble. We can leave it. He says in Nāṉ Ār, however much burden you place on God, he will bear all of it. That means we need not carry any burden. We need not think anything at all. All we need to do is to surrender ourselves.
And just for clarification's sake, you don't mean he's giving us, you don't mean he's it's not like a thing where he's like forcing you to think a certain way. It's just that your spontaneous reactions
whatever is necessary to be thought,
it will be thought.
He will do. He will think for you.
So it's like swimming, or it's like eating, or
that doesn't
sleeping.
mean all your thoughts are necessary. We think so many unnecessary thoughts.
That's true.
There are two forces driving everything. What needs to happen, what ought to happen, is being driven by his will. But there's also our will, which is driving us to act in so many ways, by mind, speech, and body. That is the problem. That is what needs to be surrendered to him. So how to surrender this will? We have to surrender the one whose will it is. So whose will is it? It's mine. So who am I?
That makes sense. So we really needn't concern ourselves with anything other than abiding as I am, holding to I am. That's the only thing we have to do, and Bhagavan does.
That is the only thing that is necessary.
I see. And then when we've clung and clung and clung like the monkey, then Bhagavan is the one picking us up, so to speak, like the mother to the kitten.
Yes.
And that could take lifetimes, basically.
When we go far enough into the tiger's jaws, he'll swallow us.
But then when we realized really Ramana was with us the whole time, guiding every step and being everything to us, doing everything, being everything.
Yeah.
And we are that, and he is that, and really it's just I.
Well,
Bhagavan
finally we will realize Bhagavan alone was all the time. He wasn't doing anything, or he was just being himself. But by being himself, he draws this ego to him and then swallows the ego.
Sometimes when I listen to you, I feel like you're saying, you're using sort of metaphysics like karma theory and so forth, but I feel like in a way you're just saying, whatever happens, happens. And then on one step deeper, you're saying nothing is happening. It's just I.
Yes. There are different levels. we can't deny it.
Totally.
That ultimately, the ultimate truth is nothing ever happens.
Nothing ever happens, exactly.
There's no arising of anything whatsoever.
Wow, that's cool.
There's not even an arising of an appearance. There's not even an arising of the ego to whom the appearance appears. That is the ultimate truth.
Very cool.
But now there seems to have been an arising. All this seems to appear.
But it's not other than what I am in my deepest nature, who I really am.
Yes.
So then I can appreciate this creek because it's not an I appreciating it. It's like not separate from Bhagavan himself. But you're saying that's still seeing multiplicity?
It's still seeing multiplicity.
Yeah. Of course it is. Weird. It takes a while to get used to that. Yeah. But if I just abide, none of these questions matter. It's kind of trying to understand your position intellectually, which is kind of problematic. But in any case, yeah.
You don't have to understand my position intellectually. Understand who you are. Cling to yourself.
Okay. And then there's nothing to discuss.
All the understanding will it becomes clearer and clearer. The more you put it into practice, the clearer it all becomes.
I see. And I think that's why it's so important that you've been discussing with individuals one-on-one, because then you can sort of get at their perspective easier rather than sort of, as he said to Yogananda, there can be no instruction en masse.
Yeah.
I was never very impressed with him, but I don't know enough to say one way or the other.
All these people, they all have their role to play.
One thing he did say that I liked in that was there was a man who didn't find himself to be very moral. He said he liked to smoke, he liked to drink, he liked to womanize, and he's like, is it still okay if I come and study here? And Yogananda was like, oh, you could do that, you could do that, you could do that, but as you keep studying, I'm not going to promise that those things won't naturally leave you. So I thought that was kind of generous of him.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like in my own life, I found that the more I study Bhagavan, the more I just crave that peace, and more than anything else, you know?
Yeah. That is, it is the nature. The nature of the ego is to have Vishaya vasanas. There was some story. Something happened. I think someone in the ashram had it was reported that someone who was living in the ashram had gone to the town and was with a prostitute or something. And when it was reported to Bhagavan, Bhagavan said, do you mean you don't have all these desires? This fellow happened to be found out. You haven't been found out yet. Something like that. I can't remember exactly what the story was. But we all, Bhagavan, there would be no need to come to Bhagavan. There would be no need for Bhagavan to appear in the world if we were free of all desires. But the nature of ego is to have desires of various kinds. So Bhagavan, all types of people were around Bhagavan. They weren't all saints who came to Bhagavan and lived with Bhagavan. People had all sorts of imperfections. Bhagavan didn't judge anyone because he knew the only way to get rid of sin is to get rid of the sinner. So Bhagavan is dealing with the very root of the problem. Bhagavan isn't concerned with sin. He's concerned with the sinner should investigate itself and find out what it actually is. Then we will find we were never a sinner.
In talks, there's a man who is married and he says, I can't stop looking at my neighbor. And Bhagavan says, it's recorded, he says, well, even if, something does happen there, you are always pure.
Yeah. I can't remember that. But I know Chadwick has recorded somewhere where someone said to Bhagavan that they were being troubled by thoughts of sex or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly how it was worded. And Bhagavan said, it's better sometimes to do it than to think about it.
Oh, wow. Okay. I know like Animalai Swami had trouble with that. And I think in one of the books it's recorded that Bhagavan had him stand on hot rocks to get rid of the thoughts.
I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical about some of these stories we hear.
I know.
But who knows? Who knows? If it was so easy to get rid of these thoughts, we could all stand on hot rocks. But the problem is not. The problem is at a very subtle level. It's at the level of the Vishaya Vasanas. How to get rid of those Vishaya Vasanas? That can be done only. The Vishaya Vasanas are very subtle, so the means to overcome them must be very subtle. It must be more powerful than the Vishaya Vasanas, so it must be more subtle than the Vishaya Vasanas. What is more subtle than the Vishaya Vasanas? To whom are the Vishaya Vasanas? To me. So that me is more subtle than its Vishaya Vasanas.
So we really just need to cling to ourselves. Like it's not like I need to let go so much as it's like I need to hold to I am.
If you hold to I am, you thereby automatically let go.
Exactly.
Letting go is necessary, but it's not sufficient because we let go every night when we fall asleep. So merely letting go is absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient.
We need to let go of I as ego.
Well, in order to let go of what is ego? Ego is I am mixed with adjuncts. If you cling on to I am, the adjuncts will slip off by themselves.
Yes. Well, that makes sense. And that is an extraordinarily easy practice. So then
it is extraordinarily easy.
We just have to know where that I is, and we all do.
What do you mean? Where are you?
Yeah, where am I? Yeah.
We shouldn't complicate it. It is so simple. The whole problem is our reluctance to hold on to that I. Why are we reluctant to hold on to that I? Because holding on to that I means giving up everything. As he says in verse 26 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. So, holding on to I am entails giving up everything, not just when we fall asleep, we give up everything, but with full confidence that the next morning we're going to pop up again and everything will come back. But clinging to I am means giving up everything permanently. Because all these things exist only for ego. If to the extent to which we cling to I am, ego thereby subsides. And if we cling only to I am and thereby let go of everything else, ego will be swallowed, and that is the end of the story.
Then
there's no turning back.
Something that's important to bring up and is Bhagavan didn't say, you've said this multiple times, but Bhagavan didn't say to stop thinking. He said to hold to I am. And then whether thoughts come or not, it's none of our business. We're to hold to I am.
Exactly. Bhagavan said about the first sutra of the Yoga Sutras is Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Bhagavan said that is not practical. Yoga is all about practice. Bhagavan said that is impractical. The practical thing is, he said, Atma-vichara. Atma-vichara is another way of saying Atma-vichara. In other words, holding on to yourself. If you hold yourself, then the chitty-britties will automatically subside. But trying to make them subside by means of pranayama and all these things, it can only lead to manolaya. The only way to bring about manonasa is what he refers to in verse 14 of Upadēśa Undiyār as Orvari, the path of investigation. Or has two meanings. It means one, it also means investigating. So we send the mind on the investigating path. Investigating what? Investigating who am I, is the implication. That is the one path that will bring about the annihilation of ego.
And then when we say holding on to I am, it sounds dualistic because there's an I who is holding on to an I, but really it's difficult to express in words, as you said. It's really being what you are.
Bhagavan said it beautifully to Akalandamaya. Be without leaving yourself. So, holding on to I am means not letting go of yourself, not leaving yourself.
And so final realization is sort of like there's no longer an ego to cling even to I am. It's just, there's just I am, and that's it. No rising, nothing.
That's what Bhagavan says in verse 20 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. He says very, very beautifully, Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing. What does that imply? Only when the ego is swallowed, then that is the state of seeing. Because when ego is swallowed, what remains? What we always actually are. Being ourselves is knowing ourselves.
I love that. And it's also seeing ourselves.
Knowing ourselves, seeing ourselves, whatever, it's just a different word saying the same thing.
Which is being, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different order. It's kind of like the kingdom of God. It's a whole different order.
Yes.
It's amongst you, it's within you, but you don't see it.
Yeah. A few days ago, someone asked me about Sadhguru quotes what Bhagavan said in one place, but our real nature is such a knowledge, but not only doesn't know other things, it doesn't even know itself.
I love that. That's very cool.
What did he mean by that? We know other things by an act of knowing. We cannot know ourselves by an act of knowing. We can know ourselves only by being ourselves. So when he said it doesn't know itself, what he meant is that it's not a knowledge, it's not a knowing like we know other things by an act of knowing. But this is knowing ourselves just by being ourselves. So he doesn't mean that is what he meant by that, what he was indicating by that is it's not a knowing like any other knowing. It is because all other knowings, you've got two things. You've got a knower and something known. But in this, there are no two. So how can we know ourselves? Only by being ourselves.
So, a lot of people are into, meditation and sort of calming down the mind and sort of being at peace and all that stuff. How does that relate to just abiding as I am? Can you still have to have sort of a sattvic state of mind? Is that the right idea? Or can you be like at the gym running on the treadmill and still abiding as I, even though there's a flurry of activity?
If you're abiding as I, you're not this body. Therefore, you're not running on a treadmill. Your body may be running on a treadmill. Your mind may be involved in so much busy work, but if you're abiding as I am, none of that is going to touch you because you're neither the body nor the mind. By abiding as I am, we are thereby separating ourselves from this body and mind. Then let the body and mind do whatever they're meant to do. No concern of ours.
Wow, that's amazing.
Regarding meditation, what you were saying, people meditate for so many reasons, and there may be so many benefits for relaxation or for reducing stress, and there may be so many benefits, but that's all fine at its own level. But this is something far, far deeper than this. This isn't just trying to relax, to de-stress the mind. This is trying to destroy the mind.
which results in bliss.
Yes, yes. Well, what remains is then bliss.
I feel like I have to add that because
bliss cannot be a result. It cannot be an effect. But it is a remainder.
Because it's what always is present when we're aware of it, so to speak. It's there regardless.
Yeah.
And we know it every night in deep sleep.
Yeah.
That's who we really are, is who we are in deep sleep. And
the same one who knows it in deep sleep knows it even now. That is what we actually are, is always aware of itself as infinite bliss.
Now, is there anything I or anyone else could do to help you, to make it easier, take some of that burden off of you so you could get more sort of needful things done?
I don't know. I think I do what I can and I leave the rest of it. It's all in Bhagavan's hands. Whatever work he wants this body and mind to do, he will make them do.
Okay. Well, let me know if I can do anything.
And whatever work
you.
he wants any other body to do, he'll make him do. He'll make them do. So let's leave it all to him.
Sounds good. I've thought of another question, since this is sort of around karma yoga. Right. Now, you have said, Bhagavan says that abiding as I am, Atma-vichara, is all of the paths in one. Can you sort of elucidate that proposition for us?
Yes. The path of karma yoga is what? Action without desire, basically. Nishkarmiya karma. That means action that is not motivated by desire. So long as we rise as ego, there will be desire in one form or another. So we can do, the karma will become perfectly nishkarmiya only when ego subsides. That's why Bhagavan said, I think in Maharshi's Gospel or somewhere it's recorded, an Atma-jnani alone can be a good karma yogi. So in order to act without desire, we need to annihilate ego. Another thing about karma yoga, people think karma yoga means doing social service or doing this or doing that. That is karma yoga. Karma yoga has got nothing to do with doing. Karma yoga means nishkarmiya karma. Emphasis. What's the difference between nishkarmiya karma and karmiya karma? Is whether we do it with desire or not. If we curb our desires, then whether we are doing or not doing, it is karma yoga. So karma yoga doesn't mean that we have to be doing all the time. It means we have to be without desire all the time. So in order to curb all desires, we need to curb the one who has desires. If ego doesn't rise, then its desires cannot rise. So whatever actions are done then are perfect nishkarmiya karma. That's why Bhagavan said, an Atma-jnani alone can be a good karma yogi. So by attending to ourselves, ego subsides, and therefore its desires subside along with it. Therefore, any actions that are done by body, speech, and mind are automatically nishkarmiya karma. Even if no actions are done by body, speech, and mind, you can do nishkarmiya karma sitting in one place doing nothing. That is body, speech, and mind, where the point is not having desire. That's part of karma yoga. And in order to, as Bhagavan has indicated in Upadēśa Undiyār, in verse 3, he doesn't just talk about nishkarmiya karma. He says, karta lokakam nishkarmiya karma. That is action that is done, nishkarmiya karma that is done for God. What does that mean? In order to act without desire for the fruit, we must be motivated by something other than desire for the fruit. We must be motivated by love for God. So the key initial stages of trying to practice karma yoga, the key is having love for God and doing whatever you do for the love of God. But The highest form of karma yoga is just to attend to yourself and thereby not allowing the ego to rise. Bhakti, bhakti means love for God, or for what actually exists, for what is real. The opposite of that, Bhagavan used in verse 14 of Upadēśa of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham, Bhagavan used the term vibhakti. Usually vibhakti means separation. But in this context, he's using it in a special sense to mean the opposite of bhakti. So having desire for other things is vibhakti, because that is what separates us. So he said, to whom of these four defects, he doesn't even mention defects, but implies defects, karma, that means action implying karma, action done with desire. Vibhakti, that implies non-devotion. In other words, having desire for other things instead of having love for God. Viyoga means separation. Ajnana means ignorance. Investigating to whom are all these is itself karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana. So the vibhakti, the lack of devotion, or the love, or the liking for other things, is for whom? It's for ego. If ego rises, it will bring its lack of devotion for us. Do we lack devotion in sleep? No. There's no problem in sleep. So investigating I brings about the subsidence of ego. So then there's no vibhakti. There's no viyoga, because viyoga means separation. When ego doesn't rise, it doesn't separate from its source. So that is yoga. And ajnana, ignorance, is for whom? It's only for ego. So when you don't rise as ego, there's no ajnana. So that is the path of jnana. So merely not rising as ego is the culmination of all these four paths.
You can attribute all sorts of charitable acts to Bhagavan. One that comes to mind is there was a stick and he sat there for hours making it into a nice walking stick, and then someone came by and had lost it or needed one or something, and he just gave it to him and went on his way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But really, when we look at Bhagavan, we don't want to emulate him and be like, oh, he was so charitable, he was so kind. But how we want to emulate him is by abiding as I, and then we are him.
Subsiding, yes, subsiding.
Subsiding.
Yeah.
And then you spontaneously do nice things. It's not a matter of I want to be a kind person. It's a matter of like, abide as you are, subside.
Yes.
And then that kindness springs forth because that is Bhagavan shining from your heart.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time with religious people lately, and it's like they talk and they talk and they talk, and you don't talk how they talk, but you're nicer than all of them. That's interesting, because it's not Michael, it's Bhagavan shining through you. Yeah. I like what you said one time. I heard you say, if anything good comes out of what I say, it's Bhagavan. If not good, then it's from me.
Yeah, well, that is the truth.
Exactly. I love that. My friend, who's a Ramana Bhakta.
About action, people want to do good action. The way to ensure that our actions are good, if we are good, our actions will be good.
Exactly.
So the key to being a good person is being good, not doing good.
Very cool. On the other hand, doing good can sort of make you become a better person.
It can. I mean, I'm not against doing good.
Yeah.
But the key to really doing good is being good. How to be good? Don't rise. So subsidence is the best way to be good. It is the only way to be truly good.
I agree with that.
The only good ego is a dead ego.
I love that. So subsiding, no longer having the dead ego is all that's left when there's a dead ego, there's nothing left, just Bhagavan himself.
Yeah, yes.
I heard an abbot talking about, some Zen people and some Eastern mystics talk about nothingness. And nothingness, I've said before, is like, to me, when you say nothingness, it's indicating Bhagavan. But how would you respond to someone who says that the ultimate truth is nothingness?
Nothing doesn't exist. If it exists, it's something. If it's nothing, it doesn't exist. It is obvious that there is something that exists. And that something is we. So we are something, not nothing. So I just find talking in negative terms is not very, I know it can be argued they're saying the same thing in a different way, but it just doesn't seem to me to be a very useful way of expressing it. Yes, it's nothing in the sense that it's devoid of both subject and object.
Exactly.
But what is the reality behind subject and object? That cannot be nothing. That must be something. That something True. Is what is. Bhagavan uses a nice word, Uḷḷadu. Uḷḷadu simply means what is, what exists.
Very true.
And what is it that exists? Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. That is, what exists is only awareness, he says in verse 23 of Upadēśa Undiyār.
Neither you nor I, just Bhagavan.
Yes, that's one way of saying it.
Pure awareness, Satchidananda.
Yes.
Very cool. Are there any works that you would recommend in addition to the ones that you normally recommend? Like, for example, do you like Kavalya Navanita or anything like that?
It's a long time since I read it, and there may be I'm sure there are nice things in it, but I just find Bhagavan is so simple and so direct. I just don't find it necessary to read anything else.
Very cool. Wow.
I mean, when for some reason or other, when things are pointed out to me and I read them, it's interesting, but I'm always viewing through the lens of Bhagavan's teachings. And I just find Bhagavan is so much more simple and direct and so much clearer. The same truth is being expressed in other ways, but I just don't find it is, well, let's say Bhagavan is my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Although definitely. I don't drink tea, but apart from that.
I actually find talking about nothing to be very, very helpful because I know it's talking about the negation of ego. And when I say nothing, when you say nothing, what's left? It's obviously not nothing, but it's the presence of God or the presence of I am. It is what it is.
It's okay. I mean, I've no problem with it, but it just seems to me to be not such a helpful way of expressing it.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on it anymore. But
Bhagavan is generally far more. I mean, of course, the ultimate reality cannot be captured in words, but it is not a negation.
Well, a long time ago, on one of our first conversations, you said, this was our difference at the time. You said, what can be simpler than one? And I said, none. So that's the difference.
None doesn't exist.
Right, exactly. None as ego, so to speak. Ego is negated, and then what's left is Bhagavan himself.
Yes.
Pure awareness, Satchidananda.
Yes.
I am I.
It is obvious that there's something. There cannot, I mean, people ask, what is supposed to be a very profound philosophical question. Why is there something, not nothing? It's a brute fact. There is something.
Exactly.
And if asking why there is something is, it's a fundamentally flawed question. Because in order to explain how there's something, if you want a cause for something, if you want a reason for something, that causes something. There can be no explanation for why there is something rather than nothing.
Exactly.
It's as simple, it's a brute fact.
Well, it was originally...
The useful question to ask is, yes, there is something. What is that something? What is it that actually exists?
Well, it kind of highlights the two different ways of doing philosophy. There's the first one was first formulated by Leibniz. Why is there something rather than nothing? But then, as formulated by Heidegger, he didn't want an answer. He was trying to subvert rational thought. He wanted you to stand in the space of the question and experience the question, as it were, the wonder that begins philosophy, not the answer that sort of ends or It's sort of the beginning of philosophy, the wonder, the experience of the wonder and the awe. Why is there something rather than nothing? Stand in the space of the question, I am.
But one thing Heidegger said that Kant wrote, but the scandal of philosophy, but we're not able to prove the existence of anything other than ourselves, something to that effect. And Heidegger said the scandal of philosophy is not our inability to answer that question, that the question itself is the idea that the question itself is a scandal to philosophy, but anyone should take it as a serious question. But of course it's a serious question. But it's not a scandal of philosophy. It is the greatness of philosophy, but philosophy makes us question. Does anything exist independent of our perception of it? That is the most fundamental, that is one of the most fundamental questions of philosophy.
Well, you see, Heidegger was more like a Zen type person. He was trying to subvert thought. So like he said, when I'm hammering something, I only stop to think about it if something has gone wrong. Otherwise, I'm just hammering.
So
it's a different way of doing philosophy. So it's more like Zen or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many different types of philosophy, but I find, different things appeal to different people. What to say?
As far as direct path and gradual path, in Zen, there was a teacher called Bodhidharma. Well, not Bodhidharma, but Huineng, and there was an abbot there, the monk there. The lead monk said the way to attain enlightenment is by like constantly polishing your mirror. And Huineng responded something like, there is no mirror. And that was seen as sort of the higher attainment. So progress therein is sort of the traditional Zen view, not talking about the Neo Advaita view, but the Zen view of gradual versus or progressive versus sudden. So Huineng heard the Diamond, he couldn't read, he was illiterate. He heard the Diamond Sutra once and attained. And so so the idea was that's the progressive. We're constantly polishing our mirror versus the sudden. You hear it once and you've attained. There is no stand upon which the mirror is resting. How can we be polishing it? There's nothing there because, going back to our tradition, because it's all Bhagavan. There's nothing to polish because it's just I am.
Yes. Ramakrishna's Advaita Guru was Totapuri. When Ramakrishna saw Totapuri meditating, he asked him, why is it necessary for him to meditate? And Totapuri said something to the effect, he showed he had a bronze vessel that many sadhus carry around a small pot in which they can take food or water or whatever. So he showed, and he said, if you don't polish it regularly, it's going to become tarnished. Like that with the mind, you need meditation to polish it, something to that effect. And Ramakrishna said, but if the vessel is gold, implying that only an imperfect vessel, an imperfect material needs polishing. But a material like gold, so if we actually attain that, then no polishing is necessary.
Beautiful. I know Ramana at one point, this is similar to the Zen tradition too. In Zen, someone said, Master, I can't, my mind, it's always having troubles. I can't pacify it. And he said, show me your mind. He said, Master, I can't find it. And Master said, it's been pacified. And Ramana said something along those lines, like, show me your mind. There is no, you can't find it because it's not an object apart from the totality. I don't know. It's not an object. You can't locate it.
Yeah. That is, we can see all the term mind. The trouble with the term mind, it's ambiguous because we use the term mind both for all the thoughts. Like the mind consists of both subject and object. The objects, the thoughts, we can see. But the root of the mind is the subject. If you try to see what that subject, that will subside and the whole mind will dissolve. So rather than fighting the mind, oh, I've got so many thoughts, I've got bad thoughts, I've got good thoughts, or whatever it is, to get the mind, to whom are all these thoughts? That is a practical way.
Bhagavan said guru is necessary.
Guru is necessary. A guru outside is necessary to turn us within. And then we discover that the real guru is what is always shining in our heart as eye.
Exactly. I don't know how on earth you discover that without someone to show you, because it's sort of mysterious for all of us until we sort of see the true eye, which is you need someone to show you who understands. Otherwise, you're just sort of lost.
Yeah. Unless you're very mature, as Venkataraman was.
Yeah.
Venkataraman's guru was Aruṇācala. Aruṇācala teaches through silence.
Wow.
But that Venkataraman, when that one who took himself to be I am Venkataraman, when he investigated himself and thereby was swallowed, he later wrote in Akṣaramaṇamālai what Aruṇācala taught him. Obviously, Aruṇācala didn't teach him words, but Bhagavan translated the silence of Aruṇācala in verse 44, I think it is. Tirumbiya Handane. That is, turning within, see yourself daily or constantly with the inner eye. It will be known. Thus you taught me. So, what Aruṇācala taught Bhagavan in silence, Bhagavan translated Aruṇācala's silence into words for us.